Hi, today I wanted to talk a little bit about manipulation because it's something that comes up pretty often, for me at least, and it's something that people don't really seem comfortable talking about. There was a video that Eli the computer guy did a few years ago. I don't remember which one it is. I asked him. He doesn't remember which one it is because one of the things you'll notice, and that he said when you do a 1 or a 2 hour video, is that when you hit done on the recording, you forget almost everything that you said. I've had the exact same problem. People have brought up things that I've said in videos before, and I don't remember saying them. I don't remember where to find it. I have no idea where it is. In one of his videos, either he was talking to a former cult leader or somebody who was investigating cult leaders or learning from them, and they had asked, how is it that you are able to indoctrinate people and get them to believe all this silly, stupid crap? And they said it's actually smart, intelligent, logical people that are easier to convince of this stuff. Because dumb people, they're not, dumb people are actually harder to manipulate because they have these basic ideas in their head, and you really can't shift them from those basic ideas. Whereas intelligent, logical people are easier to manipulate because all you got to do is get them to agree to something that may plausibly be true. So you talk about something, and you get them to agree to this one silly truth, and then you kind of carry that over onto another simple truth, and then you carry that over to another very basic simple truth. So each one of these small little bricks is true. But then what you do is you kind of build this structure around it, and when you look at all these little conniving little manipulations, they all kind of make sense. But when you look at where you started and you look at where you ended, you're like, man, this is fucked up. How the fuck did I get from here to here? And you look, and that made sense, and that made sense, and that made sense, and that made sense, and that made sense. And what I'm telling you is that sometimes you have to kind of step back and see, okay, where was I when I started? What did I think when I started? What am I being convinced of now? And try to realize, and it's going to be a feeling. And this is what I don't like, because I'm a fairly logical person. I like to look at things from a logical perspective. So what I'll do is I'll look at all these things and they'll make sense. I'll be like, man, if this seems fucked up and I started here, then why is it that all these little things along the way make sense? What you have to think about is that we often say that these small little things make sense, but only in certain circumstances. Everything is kind of subjective. Nothing is going to be 100% true in 100% of the situations. So what manipulative people are going to kind of do is they're going to take all these these things that may plausibly be true, but they're going to apply it to areas where it probably shouldn't be true. And here's how you're going to get around that. Here's how you're going to logically realize when it is you're being manipulated. Here's something that I've realized over the course of my life. If I'm not a manipulative person, and I'm talking to you and trying to convince you of something, or I'm talking to you and spreading how I think and how I feel, if you say, I don't agree with that, nah, I'm pretty sure that's not something I agree with, I'm not interested, or no, I don't agree with you, goodbye. Me not being a manipulative person, I'm going to go, okay, and go back to what I'm doing. But if I'm a manipulative person, what's going to happen is I'm going to say all these things, and I'm going to convince you of this thing, and when you go, you know what, all that makes sense, but nah, I'm going to keep trying to convince you. I'm going to keep trying to find ways to draw you back in. I'm going to keep trying to kind of redirect the conversation, redirect the arguments, redirect it so that we're not talking about this situation. We're talking about that one and how this is related to that. And this is true, which means that this argument you're making here ain't true because that's true, and all that other kind of crap. I'm going to keep kind of trying to draw you back in. So one of the logical ways that I deal with this, one of the logical ways that I use is I ask myself a question. So if this person's not trying to manipulate me, if there's no manipulation going on, then once I'm done listening to their argument, they should simply allow me to walk away. And what I realize is that people who are not manipulative, what they'll do is I'll make my argument, they'll make their argument, I'll say my piece, and then when I go to walk away, why is New York is so fucked up, man? Anyway, when I go to walk away, they will just let me walk away. But manipulative people will not let me walk away. There'll always be some way to kind of drag you back in, to pull you back in, and to get you to kind of try to realize that they were right all along. People who are not manipulative don't care what you think. They have they don't care what your opinion is. They don't care what you end up doing. But manipulative people always do. And I've had a ton of examples of this, but ultimately the best ones and the ones that are really the ones that are great to tell are the ones that are the most dramatic in nature. So when I was younger and much more of an idiot than I am now, I remember I was dating somebody, and this person was a little kind of insecure. They didn't really know who they were and what they wanted to do in life, and every now and then was a little bit depressed. Long story short, fast forward past a bunch of crap. One day I noticed that my email is on page 57. I realized that I'm probably not going to be on page 57 of my own email account. And the only other person in my apartment is my kitty and you, and my kitty knows how to click on my computer and click around and do things, and my kitty is also a very jealous kitty. She likes to know what I'm doing. She likes to watch over my shoulder when I'm working on the computer. She likes to see the TV that I'm watching. She jumps up on the couch and watches what I'm doing. But as smart and as cute and as lovely as my kitten is, I know that she probably doesn't have it in her to keep hitting next consistently to get to page 57 of my Gmail account. So I walk over to the woman and I go, so my machine over here, I'm on page 57 of my email. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't go through my email last night. And usually when I do, I don't go to page 57. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I go, did you read my email? And she turns around and is like, I'm not. And I said, I'm not going to be mad. Just talk to me. Did you go through my email? And she's like, yes. And I asked why, and she's like, "Well, I didn't really know if you were who you say you were, and I didn't know if I could trust you, and I wanted to see if the things you were saying to me were true. So I went through your email and I read it, and I go, so, what did you find?" And she's like, "Well, I didn't find anything." And it's like, I said, "Okay, goodbye." And she goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, I'm gonna give you 2 weeks to take all these things that are in my home, that are yours, and transport them somewhere else. If you don't do that, I will throw them all away and goodbye." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, you read my email. You invaded my privacy. Instead of asking any of these questions, you decided to invade my privacy." The true irony with this terrible, awful, ill-fated relationship, if you can even call it that, was that at the time I actually cared about this person and I didn't want to see other people. This person decided, I'm not really sure if I want a relationship because I'm not really sure if I want to close myself off to the world of possibilities, aka probably fucking other people or who the hell knows what. But the point is, so, then she starts saying, what? Well, don't you want me to be able to trust you? Don't you think a good relationship is based on trust? Don't you want me to be able to feel like I can trust you? I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That's plausible. Don't you think I would trust you more if I had proof that everything you said was true? Yeah, that's plausible and that's reasonable. Well, and you knew that I had problems trusting people from what I've told you and from all the information that I've told you and from my history and blah, blah, blah. And you chose to be with me, right? So that means you accepted that part of who I was, right? And I go, yeah. And again, everything being said is true. And what's happening here is this is called leading questions. So when you're in court, one of the things you'll notice if you watch Law and Order is like they'll say that's leading the witness. Leading is when you ask questions that have a yes or no answer, because that again, this is what cults do. This is what manipulative people do. They ask these questions that kind of have a yes or a no answer. Like, do you realize that you've done this? Do you know that you've done that? Would you be willing to consider doing this thing or any of that? They'll ask these leading questions that really only have one answer. And one answer makes you an idiot, and the other answer makes them right. Like that's the type of leading questions you get from manipulative people. So every single one of those things was plausible. So wouldn't I trust somebody more if I knew that what they were saying was true? Absolutely. Wouldn't I trust them more if I had proof? Absolutely. Don't I kind of have to be accepting of somebody if I had been going out with them for a year and I knew that this was a part of who they were? Of course I have to accept that. I have to accept who you are. But at the same time, let's look at the beginning and the end. You're a little bit nuts. You breached my privacy. You had no intention of telling me that you breached my privacy. I've never given you a reason not to trust me. And you went through my email. And ultimately, I don't really even, I don't like that aspect of you. So you don't trust me. You breached my privacy. You looked through my stuff. You never planned on telling me that you looked through my stuff. And you think that's okay. And not only are you not apologizing for it, but you're actually kind of explaining to me why it is this kind of my fault and why it's kind of silly that I should even be irritated. So I'm not getting mad. I'm not saying, I hate you, blah, 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 you're a terrible person. I'm simply saying you have crossed a line. You have crossed the threshold of what I feel like tolerating. Because you have crossed that threshold, I no longer wish to deal with you as whatever it is we are. And because of that, I want you to leave. And that's pretty reasonable. But then when they start doing this, when they start making those logical arguments and taking the basic situation, again, you don't trust me. You breached my privacy, and you're kind of nuts. As a result of that, I want you to go. When you start breaking it down into these little steps, you can take almost anything in the world and make it sound reasonable if you break it down into little steps. I'm pretty sure there are people out there, and in fact, I've read it on the internet, of people who've made things like the Holocaust seem like plausible, reasonable things to do because they just break every single little detail down to these little things that people can agree with. But overall, at the end of it, what happened was very fucked up. And I said, you know what? I hear everything you're saying. I hear everything you're saying, and I don't care. I don't want to be with you anymore. And I don't want you to be a part of my life. And I started to walk away, and then I hear the screaming and the crying and the more arguing and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, if you're not a manipulative person, you're just going to let that go. If you're not a manipulative person, you're simply you're not going to keep breaking things down into these little pieces. You're not going to keep trying to reel me back in. But she was manipulative. So she did. And the other sad part of this actually had to do with my own mother. So my mother was this person who, every single day of her life would talk about how we made her sick. My dad and I were the reason. So when I was 2 years old, whatever I was as a 2-year-old was something that just made her sick and mentally ill, and we were to blame for all of the problems in her life. And if we weren't there, if we weren't around to make her life so miserable, then everything would be fine and dandy. And when I saved up for a long time to move away, and what I realized is, unfortunately, a 9 and a 10-year-old cannot rent an apartment. Even if you're making $600 a week because you're modifying PlayStations to play copied games, charging $100 a pop, and you can make money, but nobody's signing a lease for a 9 or a 10-year-old. When I was 17 years old, my dad and I decided, you know what? We've kind of had enough of this. We are going to leave now. So you keep asking that we leave. I want to leave. Great. We go to leave. Why are you abandoning me? Why are you leaving me here like a dog? I can't believe that you abandoned your family. I have been abandoned. And we're just staring at this like, you know what? During the 15, 17 years that you were saying that we were failures, that we had ruined your life, that we had made everything so awful and terrible for you, that when you're actually talking about how a 2-year-old child has ruined your life in some way, you were never saying, you know what, I want you to stick around. But now that we're leaving, you kind of want, she's coming up with all these things and like, you're abandoning me. I don't know what I did to deserve this, blah, 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 blah. And she starts breaking it down into the small bits and pieces. You don't abandon your family. You're not supposed to leave your family. Everybody says that you're always supposed to love your mother. Everybody says that you're supposed to appreciate your mother. You're supposed to I brought you into this world. I gave you life, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I don't care. You can come up with all these little reasons and all these little arguments and all these little things about how you should have talked to me so I could have had time to change. You should have talked to me so I could realize what I was doing was wrong. If you cared about the wrong things you were doing, then probably over the course of the 15 years you were doing them, when we brought it up to you, you would have changed. After a certain period of time, I'm done. And what I do in my life is I move on, as simple as turning a switch. As simple as turning this from ohms to off, as simple as turning this from AC voltage to DC voltage, and my brain, it's like a switch. When you have gone over the tolerance for what I wish to deal with, I'm done. I don't care about your emotional argument. I don't care about your logical argument. All I care about is beginning and end and my principles. So you say every single day of your life that you would rather that we not be in your life, and you yell and scream and complain every day about it. So when I am able to, I say, you know what? That's great advice. Let's leave. And that's it. You can make all the little arguments you want. I don't feel guilty. I don't care, because every single day you had some argument or some crap over things that did not matter, that were trivial. If I dropped a spoon into a sink like this and she heard the clank from downstairs, she would be in that sink with a magnifying glass until 4 a.m. And she would scream and cry and say, you ruined my sink. You fucked up my sink. You destroyed my sink. If only I didn't have people living with me that destroyed my property, that ruined everything that I worked for in life and didn't appreciate it. And here's the fucked up part. You would look at the sink. You could look at that thing with the fucking Omano, the Omano, the 2300S at 45X. There was no mark in the sink. And the thing is, I understand that you probably have some mental problem. I understand that you're mentally ill and I feel bad for you. But when you show for 11 years that you will refuse everybody's advice to get treatment for that, at some point, I'm not going to want to listen to you scream for 7 or 9 or 11 hours a day about how the people that you live with ruin your life. So I leave. And it's just got to be like flipping a switch, because because manipulators will get so freaked out when you decide to flip that switch. They won't understand why it is that you decided you don't want to deal with them on that level anymore. Why is it that flipping why is it that you could just abandon me as easy as just walking out the door? I can't believe that you just walked out the door. You flipped that switch and you just walked out the door and didn't care about me. And it's like, I gave you ample opportunity every step of the way to change. I told you what irritated me about this. You didn't care. You didn't care every step of the way, so what? Now you're asking me to? Now I'm doing something wrong? Really? And it's just kind of silly. And what I want to get across to you is that manipulation is not something that happens in one foul swoop. Manipulation is something that happens in these little bits and pieces. And as much as I hate acting on gut feelings and emotions because they're not often logical, sometimes logic is the very thing that will get you in trouble with manipulation. Why do you think these really, really smart people are doing a lot of these fucked up things? Why do you think really smart people are easy to talk into joining a cult than people who are screwed in the head? The reason is because the people who are dumb, they work on their feelings. They say, you know what, when I was 2 years old, I learned that this is how I'm supposed to think, and that's the moral I grew up with. Screw you for telling me otherwise. Whereas the logical person, the forward-thinking person, is going to think, if there's a good reason for something, I would agree with it. So that's where logic works against you. And at some point, there's going to be something inside of you that says, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. And there's going to be a line. And you know where your line is for you. You're going to feel it in your heart and in your brain. It's going to be a little tingling feeling that kind of goes down the bottom of your spine that says, I have reached the limit of what it is I wish to deal with. And for me, with that woman, it was realizing that she had actually read through 57 pages of my email. And not only did she read through the 57 pages, but she was kind of telling me why you shouldn't be bringing it up. You shouldn't be mad that I did that. You should expect that I did that. And you should be okay with it. Like, no. Other people may be willing to put up with that. That's great. That's not what I want to let into my life. Having somebody that spends 5 to 7 hours a day telling you why you will fail, why you will not succeed, why you will never make money, why you are an awful human being that just does all these awful things, that's a line for me. That's a line that eventually when you cross that line, I will no longer want to deal with you. I don't care if you claim you've changed. I don't care if you say that things are going to be different. I don't believe you. And even if you show me proof of it, I don't care. The switch flipped, and that is how I deal with manipulators. I just stop caring. I don't invest myself into the situation. I walk away. And a lot of people will think that you're being a dick by walking away from the manipulator. A lot of people will think that and the real trouble here is that sometimes being the person who walks away from the manipulator makes you a dick. It makes you an asshole. It makes you a douchebag. And I want you to really think about this for a little bit. Let's just take a silly fictional scenario. Let's say you work at a store and your job is to count up the cash register, right? And here's the thing. Wrongdoing, you don't really get to the really bad, fucked up thing in one foul swoop. You get to it in those little blocks. You get to it in those little manipulative, logical blocks. That's how you get from good to bad. That's how you get from something that you would be okay with to something you're not okay with. And there's a little fictional story here. Probably a terrible analogy since it's 1 a.m. But let's say that you work at a store and you notice one day that there's an extra $300 in the register, or and you're about to walk over to the boss's office to talk about it. You're about to say, hey, we have an extra $300 in the register. But your key person or your manager says, hey, stop. And he hands you 150 of those dollars and says, stop. Just be cool. And you're like, and you trust that person. You're friends with that person. You know that person. That person trains you for this job. They're the one who went to the boss and suggested that they hire you for this job. They gave you an opportunity that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Not only has that person done all this great stuff for you, that person's handing you $150 and they're not asking questions about it. So you're like, okay, fine. Then one day you look at the register and you're $1,500 over. So now you're like, screw this. This is enough. And you go over to walk into the boss's office, and you're not in front of just this key person, but you're in front of a group of your coworkers. And he goes, stop. And he hands $250 to you and the 2 other coworkers there. And you're like, you know what? Fine, because now not only do you have an urge to do the right thing, you want to tell your boss that there's a ridiculous amount of extra cash in the register, but you don't want to disrespect the person who helped you get this job. You don't want to disrespect the person who you respect immensely. And also, now you kind of have, there's an audience. There's two other people here that are about to get 150 or 250 bucks of extra cash from the register. By you being a dick, not only are you disrespecting the key person, you're also being a dick to those other two people. They could use that money to have a fun night. They could use that money to help pay their rent. They could use that money to help pay their car. But they can't because you, that jackass, want to do the right thing. And then the same thing happens, and now there's 5 people, and there's an extra $10,000 in the register, and you're like, this is enough. But those 5 people are like, man, why do you want to be the dick for? And now just the peer pressure comes in, and you don't want to do, you don't go to tell the boss because you're afraid of the peer pressure. You got 5 people that are getting paid an extra $500 off of all this money that's in the register, and the key person, again, that's the person who got you the job, that's the person who helped you out, so you don't say anything. Then you come into work on the 5th day of the week, and you look in the news, you turn on the news, and you see that a school that's across the street from you blew up. The FBI raids your store, and they find out that the group of people that blew up the school across the street was funded by cash that was funneled through your business. And you know who they arrest? They arrest you. They don't care that you didn't want to be the dick. They don't care that you didn't want to be the asshole. They don't care that you were manipulated. All they care about is that you were a part of it. And because you were a part of it, enjoy your cell in Guantanamo Bay. And this is obviously a fictional story, but this is how I believe bad things happen. This is how I see in the real world how good people who are on good paths wind up breaking from those paths and doing bad things or dealing with bad people. They get convinced one step of the way. It's one little step at a time, and each time it's plausible. Don't you respect me? Didn't I help you out? Just take this and deal and enjoy it. Don't get all these people in trouble. You wind up being the dick. When you break a manipulative situation, you wind up being the jackass. You wind up being the asshole, and none of us wants to be the asshole. But what I have to say here is that more people in the world should not care what people think of them. More people in the world should be empowered and confident enough to not give a fuck what other people think of them, and be okay with being the asshole, and be okay with not doing what's easy right now, but doing what's easy to live with. In my life, I seek to do not what's easy right now. I seek to do what's easy to live with. It's easy to just deal with, agreeing with somebody when they're presenting me something that seems logically okay. It's easier to live with not dealing with manipulative situations when I don't feel comfortable with what's going on. And you know what? I'm totally okay with that. I'm totally okay flipping the switch. I'm totally okay living life the way that I see fit. And you should be too. It's the same thing with that Yelp shit. Again, where I had a telemarketer calling me over and over and over and over and bothering me and giving me other people's information. That telemarketer that called me was a young woman that had a promising future ahead of her, that was probably a kind and caring individual with good friends that cared about her family, that just wanted to make an honest living. And look at me, the asshole, coming along and doing a video after, kind of tricking this person into giving me Sonny's private information. What kind of asshole am I? But you have to realize is that, again, the wrongdoing, it happens in these pieces, and when you decide to break it, it's flipping a switch. At that point, I didn't take any of that into consideration. All I thought about is, I'm tired of being called by telemarketers. Again, I look back, I zoom out on the situation, and I say, I'm tired of being called by telemarketers. I've repeatedly asked over 7 years to not be called by this telemarketer. They use that as fuel to keep calling me. And you just look at the beginning and you look at the end, and you ignore all the logical arguments. You ignore all the, that person probably was being told to do that by their boss. That person was working in a culture where they encourage that type of boiler room sales. That person was working and just trying to make money and have their first marketing job so they can move on to something better. Why are you trying to? Well, you got to ignore all that shit. And you got to be okay sometimes with just being a dick. I am sick and fucking tired of being called and telemarketed to. I decided that I didn't want to be repeatedly manipulated. I feel like it's manipulation when somebody calls me and continues to try to convince me as to why I should give them $2,000 a month when that plan very well does not work for other people that are paying that $2,000 a month. I feel it's manipulative to continue calling me when I tell you stop calling me. So I called it out. And I decided, you know what? I'm self-confident enough in who I am. I know that I'm a good person in my own life. I know that I'm a good person to the people who care about me, enough that I don't care that I'm being a little bit of a dick just to you. So I'm going to flip that switch, and I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure that you never call again. And I did, and it worked. Sometimes you just gotta break the inertia. You gotta call enough, and you're gonna know. It's gonna be a feeling in the back of your spine. It's gonna be something in your heart, your brain, your spine. It's gonna be a little tingling feeling when you know that you've had enough. And when I got that phone call and I was listening to all this bullshit, and when I got that final email from Erica, I knew that I had enough, and I don't care about all this crap that led us to where we are. Because again, bad things don't happen in one movement. They happen like this and this and this and this. And because you're not stopping the bad from going from here to here, you're just stopping this plausibly kind of okay thing from going to that plausibly kind of okay thing. When I do that, I'm a dick. And people are afraid of being dicks. And you got to be okay with the fact that other people may think you're a dick. You got to be okay with not caring what other people think of you. If you yourself are going to close yourself off to the downside of being manipulated by other people. I want to close myself off to being manipulated by other people. I want to have a free life where I do things the way I see fit, and when I feel like, you know what, I don't want to deal with this situation, that I can just walk away. And I want you to feel like you can do the same thing too. What you have to realize is that there's always going to be some reason as to why right now is the wrong time to flip the switch. Why are you doing it now but you didn't before? Because here's the thing, since it's not like you're going from here to here, but since you're going from here to here to here to here to here, since each one of those blocks are evenly sized, it's going to be like this. So if you were okay with this, and then you were okay with this, and then you were okay with this, well, why are you not okay with this? Because each one of those little pieces of manipulation is the exact same amount of manipulation. It's always the same amount of manipulation, the same amount of reasoning, the same amount of time. It's always the exact same little block. Again, you're not going from being a nice person to being a terrorist in one step. It's just, well, you were okay with this, right? Then you were okay with this, right? Then you were okay with this, right? Then you were okay with this, right? So why are you not okay with this? Why are you being a dick? Why are you being an asshole? Why are you being insensitive? Why are you being so mean when you were okay with those other things? And that's why it has to be like flipping a switch. That's why it has to be like something you simply decide, you know what? I've had enough, and where you don't care. Because when are you going to say enough is enough? When are you going to say that I'm done and sick and tired of this? Because if you were okay with this and this and this, if somebody can use that argument with you, if somebody could say, well, you were okay with that, and then you were okay with that, and then you were okay with that, then that means that they're always, then you're going to be stuck being okay with these little blocks for the rest of your life. And that means that that person has the power to direct you to believe and to think exactly what they want you to think, just because you're afraid of what people think of you. That's the power of flipping the switch. That's the power of saying, you know what, I'm done. I've had enough. Goodbye. I'm done. Blah, 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 and walking away. Being okay with simply flipping a switch and saying, I'm done with this. Being okay simply going, zoink, I don't want to deal with this anymore, is what's going to empower you to leave a manipulative situation. Because what you're saying at that point is, yes, I made the mistake of taking this little walk, and then I made the mistake of this, and then I made the mistake of that. You know what? You're right. I was okay with all those things. But now I'm not. I don't care. And I'm done. If you think you're being manipulated, this is the one basic test that you need to do. Walk away. Does that person try to draw you back in, or does that person let you walk away? If they let you walk away, they're not trying to manipulate you. But if they're constantly drawing you back in, again, ignore the logical arguments. Ignore everything that seems to make sense, because everything that seems to make sense is going to get used against you, and it's going to get used to convince you to do things that you don't want to do and that often are probably not even right. All you have to do is just make a little thing in your head. Is that person trying to draw me back in when I try to leave, or is that person okay with me leaving? Because if they're okay with you leaving, they're not trying to manipulate you, and that's probably a cool situation. But if you're always trying to drag and drag and drag and drag, think twice.